sun on the meadow is summery warm. The stag in the forest runs free, but gather together to greet the storm. Tomorrow belongs to me. The branch of the linden is leafy and green. The Rhine gives its goat to the sea. But somewhere a glory awaits unseen. Tomorrow belongs to me. The babe in his cradle is closing his eyes. The blossom embraces the bee. But soon says a whisper of eyes, arise, tomorrow belongs to me. Oh, fatherland, fatherland, show us a sign. Your children are waited to see. The morning will come when the world is mine. Tomorrow be lost, tomorrow be lost, tomorrow belongs to me. Oh, fatherland, fatherland, show us a sign. Your children have waited to see. The morning will come when the world is mine. Tomorrow belongs, tomorrow belongs, tomorrow belongs to me. Tomorrow belongs, tomorrow belongs, tomorrow belongs to me. Oh, fatherland, fatherland, show us a sign. Your children have waited to see. The morning will come when the world is mine. Tomorrow belongs, tomorrow belongs, tomorrow belongs to me.
Assalamu alaikum, my Muslim brothers and sisters. I come to you today to atone before Allah for my misdeeds against His people. I perpetrated grievous verbal abuse against the defenseless and entirely innocent people of Islam by very sincerely threatening nuclear genocide on the serious platform that is a Discord server. Little known fact, I was given permission by the United States government to do it. Not only did I have the codes, but the launch keys were in and the missiles were seconds away from being launched. All of a sudden though, I received a flood of Twitter mentions telling me that the actions I described were morally wrong, a fact which I was completely oblivious to. In their sage wisdom, they proved irrefutably that my hatred was unjustified, assuring me that there is no meaningful correlation between Islam and the proliferation of rape gangs in Europe. Long story short, peer pressure succeeded in completely changing my mind, and the peacemaking spirit of John McCain inspired me to stop the nukes just in time. Since then, I've become a devout follower of the Prophet Muhammad. Suffice to say, I've been having a fuck ton of fun. Of course, I get raped by my 40-year-old husband every so often, and I have to worship a black cube to indirectly please an ancient Canaanite god. But at least I get to go to San Fran and stone the shit out of some gays, and the cops can't do anything about it because California's a crypto caliphate. The only part of Islam I absolutely cannot get into is the anti-Jew stuff. Personally, I just can't support any sort of animosity towards Jews. I wouldn't want to be a Nazi now, would I? I assume most of you have noticed the policies surrounding hateful conduct on social media platforms, virtually tightening a muzzle on the head of anyone whose speech eludes the narrative. They're purging their user base, using pseudo-offenses as an excuse to squeeze out ideological dissent and enforcing conformity into every internet community they can get their hands on. While the deplatforming can be partially chalked up to out-of-touch big tech CEOs who are just taking the path of least resistance, there certainly seems to be a coordinated effort coming from strident professional complainers who share an objective of removing reactionaries from all means of communication. Their job entails closely monitoring the posts of whatever online personalities they come across until one of them says something that's deemed unacceptable. When this happens, these fucking Reddit homos speed to the scene, fueled by their lust for character assassination. If you pay attention to the identity these people put on when they do this, you'll notice it's not their conscious selves, it's a sub-personality. And since they're essentially possessed, they tend to expose things about themselves without even noticing. Because of that, it's very obvious that their behavior has been shaped by years of being humiliated and socially rejected by women. I know that reading will elicit people to accuse me of armchair psychology, but ask yourself this. Why do they always speak like insufferable women? You see, I've had enough run-ins with these amoebas that I understand how they operate, and they never confront you directly. Instead, they default to saying things like, "This is not a good look." I know that sort of language immediately gets the blood boiling, but think about it. They're saying you look bad rather than saying you're wrong. The reason for that is that their objective is not to challenge your ideas, but to give you the feeling that a Stacy stare does. Because in their little pea brains, being a social outcast is the worst thing you can be. To put it bluntly, their whole MO is a post hoc projection. They imagine themselves to be the Stacy that rejected them years ago, and their intention is to make you feel how they felt, inadequate. For example, when they say something is not a good look, ask yourself, who does it look bad to? The purpose of that little phrase is to make you imagine that there's a group whose opinions you should care about, but don't fall for it. They're powerless little prions who spend all day on the computer, scouring the internet for people to harass. And there's a reason why they always defer to groups, which fits neatly into my theory. Men, in general, tend more towards antisocial behaviors than women, which is why they're not afraid of confrontation or expressing themselves in an unpopular fashion. These spiritual manlets, however, are feminine, so they defer to groupthink for everything. And their method of attacking you is saying, "You're not popular in our group, therefore you should feel bad." However, this too folds, since unlike the Stacys, they don't actually have a group they belong to. And on top of that, it'd still be meaningless, since the
Okay, so, I want to start this video with a clarification that fascists indoctrinating children is not new. It's not special. It is actually incredibly consistent of fascists to indoctrinate children. There are a couple of layers to that. This person, Soph, is a YouTuber with over 500,000 subscribers. And she has recently been making the rounds on various alt-right and alt-right adjacent, so far as that distinction is worthy of being made, podcasts. She showed up on Dick Masterson's program. She showed up on Ethan Ralph's program. She is not an open white nationalist. She self-identifies as an anarcho-capitalist, which is fundamentally white nationalism without owning the positions. So she gets to still hide behind the midway point of bigotry, which is to say, her problems with the same marginalized groups that the alt-right hates is, it's my liberty, that's at stake instead of my race. But she'll get there. My prediction, from having been in this environment for so long, is that, and again, it breaks my heart because, and I'm not being sarcastic, it actually hurts me. I'm not that young, and there are little girls in my family that are this person's age. It genuinely breaks my heart that just based upon if she stays in this space long enough, her utility as a useful idiot, as a puppet for these positions, will depreciate and decay until the white nationalists turn to her and basically go, "Hey, Soph, it's time to shit or get off the pot. It's time to go full fash." No one, if you do a little research into the transition of most white nationalists, it goes conservatism, then either libertarianism or narco-capitalism, then full fascism. It's as predictable as caterpillars becoming butterflies. So the trajectory I see for this child is tragic. And unfortunately, people who are well researched on Soph's history in this space and in this conversation are aware of the fact that her brother is a staunch white supremacist and is most likely the key in she's been doing this. She's 14 now, and she's been doing this since she was 11 or 12 years old. And I doubt that when she was 11 years old that Soph was reading The Federalist and Breitbart.com. I find that highly unlikely. And if she was, and if she is now, she is probably incapable of comprehending, like, okay, so she's literate, right? She's a kid, but she's probably old enough to read. But if you think that a fucking 14-year-old really understands the complexities of global race politics and international imperialist policy and all that stuff, that she's way too young to be involved in any of this stuff. She's obviously reading from a script. I would not be shocked if, all the times that she's apparently spending on 4chan and 8chan and all these poison soup websites, that she's come upon these talking points, because her thing is, I'm not just reading off of cue cards. I've come upon these ideas honestly because of the free and open internet, blah, blah, blah. The standard, it's not white nationalism, it's the truth via alternative media bullshit that most of these people sort of get carried away on. So I wouldn't be shocked if she supposedly came across this stuff, so-called, these talking points honestly, but I still don't think that she is capable of grasping the significance of what she's saying, or, again, I always come back to this, right? Hitler Youth were a real thing. And, if you ask me today, like, okay, this person was, Hitler Youth. They were a 13-year-old Nazi, and now the war's over, and what do you do with them? You don't hang them. You don't put them in jail. There is a... I don't know. I just feel like this is a person who's not fully formed yet, and is a victim of Nazis nesting in vulnerable spaces. So I've always come back to this comparison between fascism and Scientology, and I guess to an extent, certain other religious groups, that they target the vulnerable, that they occupy the spaces that people who are vulnerable to the ideology are going to be in. So what do fascists do? Because they come back to this talking point of that they're red-pilling Generation Z, that all the other generations are. Again, this is just basically them getting to your kid before your kid gets access to information, and making sure that they frame all of the information that comes into your child's mind and comes into your child's area of influence, so they get, look at 11 years old. I mean, who knows what the average, people always like to make jokes, the average channer, right? The average 4chan troll is 14 or something. My experience is that channers are usually older people who are completely displaced. It has a lot to do with unemployment. So the channers skew either very young or somewhere in middle age. So like it seems like channers are either unemployed high school kids, college kids, or they're like freshly divorced dudes who also lost their job and lost their house in the recession, and they're like sitting. What channers have in common is they are people generally without any kind of connections to society at large. They're completely disaffected. They either graduated high school or college and went out into the world and didn't find any kind of connection, no job, no relationship, or they are people who have lived in the world and capitalism divested them of the things that they had before. Karen took the kids, so now all they're left doing is paying alimony and sitting in the basement thinking about how Hitler was actually a really reasonable guy who made sense and loved his people, etc. Quote unquote. Okay. This brings us back to Soph, because this seems like a kid who was relatively isolated and had a lot of time on her hands, being a fucking kid. And instead of relating to people her own age, she found, and again, it's not uncommon for kids who are alienated within their own age group to go find validation from the older kids if they parrot the ideas and tastes of these older kids. And in this case, it was literally an older sibling. Do I think that Soph should be held accountable for what she is saying? As far as the YouTube space, I think her channel should be out. It should be banned. She should be held to account like anybody else. If she's participating in the YouTube space, she should be held accountable to the hate speech provisions in the terms of service. I think that a counselor or teacher should be contacted at her school, not to punish or expel her because she's a little girl. I think that adults need to sit down with Soph and have a discussion with her about what she's been doing online and what kind of implications what she's done online can have. Because if you think, and again, I've been commenting on this stuff for a few years now. The internet never goes away. Whatever you did on the internet is going to be here until humanity's no longer got access to any kind of technology or anything to pull it up. Eventually it will catch up to you, and when Soph goes into the world, unless her big dream is to become a commentator for InfoWars or something, she's not going to be able to get into a legitimate college. Or if she does, eventually someone will find this stuff and get her kicked out. she will not be able to get like a regular mundane job because someone will find this shit and she'll get rightfully fired for holding these positions. So I think the prescription here is, number one, to be aware that Hitler Youth is not new. This is going to get way worse. That's kind of what I want to sort of present here, is that this is not an outlier. There's going to be a larger wave of Hitler Youth style kids on social media because the man children of the alt-right are in their gaming spaces, in their discords, and again, so they're meeting these people that seem to speak their language about geek culture, which is, ostensibly for younger, or at least is when people get introduced to that kind of stuff, they're usually younger, and they are mixing they're mixing pop culture and meme culture with fascism, so it creates this illusion that young people are more fascist, when in fact it's just that they haven't learned yet how to separate, the wheat from the chaff. So be prepared for more of this. But also, I'm not, I wouldn't prescribe for Soph what I would prescribe for Mike Enoch or one of the other, 40-something-year-old white nationalist people. They deserve, the full extent of punitive action. This is a kid. I hope that 5 years from now, that she, if she divests from this stuff completely, I don't think this should haunt her. If she's departed these positions and makes proper apologies and actively, because again, it's not enough to say you're sorry. You have to, since you've done damage, you've got to actually become active in the other direction. You know what I mean? So, again, I hope that this kid grows out of this. I don't think that she necessarily will, as long as hundreds of thousands of subscribers are associated with this philosophy. She's going to be stuck in this identity because of clout culture and stuff like that. But, I'm not a pessimist. That's not my deal. I'm not a pessimist. That's not my deal. And I have real hope that Soph is going to grow up to be an adult and grow past all this.